Eine Familie, die
A family saving 260 euros per year only by switching the shower head and shower hose. Those are the little things that are a huge success in our DoppelPlus project. We have the motto, seize opportunities and protect the climate. And we want to focus on fuel poverty in the Tyrol. This is our closing event because we have been working on this for 4 years. But before, ladies and gentlemen, before I introduce our program to you, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Dara Meyer, and I am responsible for the Tyrol 2050 Energy Autonomous Project, a project by Energie Tirol, and I will present this project to you. The event is being interpreted live, simultaneously. You will find a video in the English language as well on the website of the state of the Tyrol. Unfortunately, we do not have the presentations in the English language. However, if you wish to receive it in English, please let us know. There are sustainable ways out of fuel poverty. Klimabündnis Tirol, Energie Tirol, the Caritas community of Wörgl and AlpS have been dealing with this question of how to become sustainable. We will have a look at the results and at the learnings of this project today, and this will be a program. First of all, Climate Protection State Councillor and the State Councillor for Energy, Ingrid Philippe and Josef Geisler. We will welcome Georg Benke. He will be the keynote speaker and give us an overview of the bigger picture of fuel poverty in Austria and in Europe. Afterwards, Andres Dicker, he is a project coordinator of DoppelPlus in the Klimabündnis Tirol initiative. He will give us an insight in the results and the lessons learned in connection with the project. Afterwards, Roland Gruber, volunteer energy and climate coach, will speak about his experience, his first-hand experience from the field, how the little successes were shown in households. Afterwards, we will have a look at numbers behind the project. We will see numbers regarding the effects of this project presented by Maximilian Riede. Ingrid Philippe, State Councillor for Climate Protection, will then talk about how we want to continue this project in the future, because of course we do not want to finish this project here. We will still focus on this issue in the future, and she will speak about how this should work. And finally, there will be a panel discussion with everybody involved. The speakers, the 4 speakers, Georg Benke, Andres Dicker, Roland Gruber, and Maximilian Riede, will answer questions from the audience, so feel free during the presentations to ask your questions. We have several channels for that. You can use our YouTube live chat. You can send us an email. You can see the address here, and you can also write text messages. So let's get started. I would like to welcome Josef Geisler, our State Councillor for Energy, and I would like to ask you regarding your experience. You were supportive of the project from the beginning. There was not only the LIFE program funding from the EU, there was more funding on your side. Why does your heart beat for this project? Ladies and gentlemen, and dear colleague Ingrid Philippe, we are here in the huge large room of the Tyrolean Parliament, where they usually meet. Of course, it is not very easy in this pandemic. However, we have opportunities to have an exchange, even though we cannot meet in person. So I think it's very good that we have the opportunity to have an exchange, to look back and at how things have worked out for us in the past. The state of Tyrol, and Ingrid and me especially, have the objective to make the state of Tyrol energy autonomous in the future, of course together with all the citizens, because on our own we would not be able to implement this. We want to have an energy transition in our state. The topic of Tyrol 2050 is not only a huge goal, it also shows us where we want to go and where we want this journey to end. And so we put a lot of effort into this program. We can only achieve this kind of energy transition by encouraging everybody to take part. Of course, we need funds, we need the money, but if we don't go into the communities and reach the people, we won't be able to implement it. So we need the people, and we have great people who put a lot of effort and commitment into this. So we are optimistic that we will have this energy transition. In the Tyrol, we have many people and many households who are poor, and they are affected by fuel poverty. The project DoppelPlus tries to reach these people and support them. The project DoppelPlus is also a preventive approach to this problem. This afternoon, we will learn that this has already been achieved to some extent, and the challenge is to be able to continue this process. Of course, in times of lockdown and homeschooling, there is more energy consumption at home, so these households will also face more difficult situations nowadays. For example, these households use 5 to 10% more energy than before. Of course, they have to pay more for energy and fuel than before. So we think it is a really important project, and we want to support it as a state once the EU funding ends, because we are convinced that this is a really good project and a project that moves people to participate. Also, thank you very much to all our volunteers who did such great work, and of course to our experts who participated in this program. We think this is really important. Of course, we also fund the building of new buildings because energy-saving building uses less energy in the end. In the long term, of course, this will amortize itself. We try to put more money into this because in the end it will be sustainable and it will pay off. We are not at the very beginning of the path. We have already made some steps, and I would like to thank everybody who has been part of the process. And today, in this closing event, we want to show you maybe one or two optional paths for the future. Thank you very much. Ingrid, you as a Deputy Governor and State Councillor for Climate Protection have been supporting this project from the beginning, both financially but also with your network. You have put great effort into this. What do you think? Where is the potential for the future? Thank you very much. Good afternoon from Innsbruck. And I would like to say hello to everybody who is joining us through the screen. It is very sad that we cannot meet in person. We have this distance. However, it is quite exciting because looking at the list of participants, we see that beyond the borders of the state of Tyrol, we can present our results and we can share our knowledge with people sitting at home in other states, Austrian states, maybe in other countries all across Europe. So this is really exciting, and we would like to tell you about our experience. In 2013, 2014, as Josef Geisler already said, we decided that by 2050 we want to make the state of Tyrol energy autonomous, and we did a lot of things for that. We started using some tools. One question, of course, was how can we do this? How can we reach this and reach the people who are poorer? How can we motivate them to change their behaviors in everyday life? How can we motivate these people to take a first step that might seem difficult and that might cost something at the beginning, but finally pay off a couple of years later? How can we motivate people to take part in our energy transition and protect the climate? We have partner organizations who set a good example. We use energy consultations, for example, raise awareness, and in a great partnership with all the associations supporting us, we found a lot of volunteers who supported us, who helped us reach people and households who might not be interested in energy transition in the first place, who might not care so much about the environmental impacts, but about saving costs, saving energy. We will have a look at the results and about and what worked and what did not work so well this afternoon. I can tell you right now that we are very optimistic and we are satisfied with our results. So we, as the state of Tyrol, decided we will continue this project, and next year we want to look at possible further steps to help us get people out of fuel poverty, how to motivate them to care more about the environment, about energy saving, and also explain to them that they could save many costs in their budget. And we will create more initiatives with our partners, maybe with the European Union. We want to have an environmental friendly component, we want to be social, and we want to have an impact on the protection of the climate. Thank you, Ingrid. We will speak about this later on. First of all, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Benke, Georg Benke. He has been involved in the DoppelPlus project from the beginning, and he has been part of some good exchange in this project. So I'm very happy to welcome the co-founder of E7 Energy Innovation and Engineering Research Institution. Mr. Benke, you have been involved in this topic for quite a while. You started working on it in 2012. Right now you're part of the project Social What. I'm sure you will speak about this as well. So I'm looking forward to what you have to say. Thank you very much.
Hello to Tyrol. From my side, I'm really sad that I cannot be with you today. Ladies and gentlemen, State Councillor for Energy, Josef Geisler, State Councillor for Climate Protection, Ingrid Felipe. I'm really glad that I can address you here now after the welcoming words by the politicians that have been invited with my keynote, because we have a social responsibility for our neighbors within our society, but the EU is also introducing directives and has a legislative mandate in order to make sure that we can fight fuel poverty. Of course, this should be an apparent issue for everybody who has a social conscience. The fact that lawmakers have to come up with regulation also shows us that we have a need for organized energy in our lives. It's not just about improving the quality of life, but it's about making a normal life possible. It's about providing warmth, comfort, light, and information. And it's not only concerning us during this pandemic when life is getting even more difficult for vulnerable people. Energy is a product that we cannot do without. Because it's easy to talk about fuel poverty, but it's much harder to get active, to take action, and to make sure that we reach the person that we want to help and to set the measures accordingly. In Austria, we assume that 3% of all households are affected by fuel poverty. But actually, it's not that easy to really say how many households are affected. There are definitions about fuel poverty, but they can also be problematic. Because sometimes we then shift the focus of our support system and it might go in the wrong direction at a certain point. At the same time, we have to come up with definitions of fuel poverty. It has to be feasible, but also meaningful. Because in the end, we want to come up with recommendations for policymakers to provide resources and create opportunities to fight fuel poverty. In Austria, we are relatively lucky. Only 3% of households in Austria are affected by fuel poverty, whereas in Europe, it's 11% of households. This amounts to 54 million citizens in the European Union that have issues of having the energy at their disposal in their daily lives that they actually need. Even if in Austria we don't have these extreme numbers when it comes to fuel poverty, and the definition is probably never ideal. It really depends what aspect you want to focus on, if you want to define the target group or what you want to look at in your everyday life. It's not that important actually when you work with the people. It is important to have social experts that can make decisions and energy experts that can support them in order to set specific measures. But even within that framework, we need a certain liberty to really support people when they need it, a little less control maybe to really take specific measures to support vulnerable people. And DoppelPlus has made it its goal to look at this topic in Tyrol and to help the affected families. I don't have the exact numbers at my disposal right now, but I assume it's also 3% of households that are affected, which amounts to 10,000 to 11,000 households that are affected by fuel poverty. And I had the impression when I looked at the material of DoppelPlus and I talked to its representatives, and of course, in the end, we also had to face Corona, which didn't make things easier. So I had the impression that DoppelPlus was really successful at the European level, and I want to congratulate you on this. I don't want to take away anything that is going to be presented by the following speakers, but I think a lot of experience was gathered. And it's important to find out how we can reach the affected households so we can get them the support they need. So I don't want to really go too far into presenting the project itself, but rather give you an overview on fuel poverty policies, what happens at the national level in Austria, at the European level, and maybe give you an outlook on where we are headed or where we should be headed. Right now, at the European level and at the national level, we have numerous projects that we should take a look at. I personally, as has been mentioned by the moderator, I personally work for Social What, because they also have the mandate to fight fuel poverty. Also, I would like to mention NPOR, which is a project that is supported by politics as well, where The project coordinators look at the private rental market, and Empower Med is also a project I would like to present to you, because here we also see that fuel poverty is a female issue, is a women's issue as well. And it's all about female empowerment, because if you look at who is really affected by fuel poverty, you will find out quite quickly that women are one of the target groups that we should definitely focus on, because they are predominantly fuel poor. But also at the national level, there's a lot going on. I know that right now in the Ministry for Climate Action, there are programs to fight fuel poverty, and I am looking forward to see open discussions, public discussions in the next couple of months. I hope that all participants will be able to share their knowledge, also the DoppelPlus initiative, to make sure that we have an active policy against fuel poverty and we can all contribute with our knowledge. A second research project that we see right now is supported by the Climate Fund. And here we look at how heat supply can be supported, because a lot of times it's the actual structural issues of the buildings that leave people fuel poor and that limit our efficiency measures. So I want to invite all of you to actively use all the gathered data of all of these projects. Take a look at it, look at the reports, download them, and maybe you find an interesting impulse for your work, for your projects, to further develop what you're doing right now in the field of fuel poverty, or maybe develop into a different direction the projects that you are working on right now. I personally am actively working with Social What, and it's really important for us that we get national recognition and that we establish a dialogue on a national level. But we don't only have these projects to present to you. At the European level, there are also 2 programs in Austria that I would like to present to you as well, because they are actual model projects for the European Union. One of them is the Caritas Stromhilfe-Fonds, which has been going on for years, and they can show significant results, because here the specific measures have been taken to really support people in need. And another project of that sort would be the Ombudsman Service Point of Energy Wien. That could be a model to show how energy providers can work within the field of fuel poverty. I think these are 2 very important model projects. Overall, I think Austria is really on a good path when it comes to setting measures against fuel poverty. Also thanks to the project DoppelPlus, I also think that the legal framework is good when it comes to providing information, also all the technical possibilities that we have, but there is room for improvement, and we should really consider our priorities every day and our perspectives. I personally have been involved in the first projects against fuel poverty in 2012, and I've written my guidelines at that time. I have to say that this guideline is it has still not been put into practice, but I have worked with several projects. It's still current, the issues are still current, but I want to focus on the wording that has been changed in the last couple of years, because we've been talking about fighting fuel poverty a lot, but I prefer talking about coping with fuel poverty instead of fighting against it. How do we cope with fuel poverty? How does our society cope with fuel poverty? That should be the question. So it's not so much about fighting. I think it's yes, it is a target to fight fuel poverty, but we can take a lot of tension out of this whole wording if we think about coping with the topic of fuel poverty rather than fighting it. So we want to cope with it in order to help the affected people, so that we can provide a legal framework to help more quickly and more efficiently. One of the most important measures here is a service point that affected people can go to, that they can contact when they are in need. For me, it's important that we don't have a typical service employee sitting there, a service employee of an energy provider that might know a lot about how we can correctly read energy bills or how to interpret energy bills. But what we actually need is an expert that understands the issues that these people are affected by. And this expert also needs the authority to find solutions that work for everybody. And I want to emphasize at this point that even for the energy provider, the most accommodating solution can be the most cost-effective solution. Because if someone is late on their payment and the energy providers have to follow up on these late payments, this also costs them a lot of money. But I think that we have to be careful when addressing the issue from this side of the energy providers. But what we should always question is how the whole topic of fuel poverty is being perceived in our society. Usually it only comes to light when there is already a conflict situation between energy providers and the affected households. There is conflict potential in this whole scenario. But the government has actually shifted this responsibility to energy providers, although you could say that fighting poverty is not the task. It's not the job of a private company, it's the job of the government, and I don't want to go into this whole discussion, but you can definitely say that there is a lot of potential when it comes to coping with fuel poverty. If we don't look at just the mere numbers and the payments that go to the energy provider from the social perspective, the situation is that the government sees this responsibility in the hands of the energy provider, especially grid-bound energy sources. And this is, of course, regulated at a national level, and I think in Austria we are at a good point here. A lot of initiatives can be seen as model initiatives, but there's one problem when it comes to the interface between the energy providers and the government. The main problem is that the fuel poverty only comes to light when there's already been an issue, when the household cannot pay their bills any longer, so it's already too late. What we should ask ourselves is, what can we do to support and reach these households more easily and earlier on? Are there possibilities to address these households, to reach them directly? How can we reach households that already do without energy? They don't switch on their heating anymore. They don't turn on their lights. And maybe they don't even have access to information anymore. I think it's especially important to find a good level of communication with all the energy providers that are legally responsible and the social institutions that usually do have access to the households that are at risk of poverty or fuel poverty. And they are the ones that speak their language best. So this level of communication has to be constructive, and after that we could work together, so energy providers and social institutions, and solve problems before they get urgent, before it's too late. So what I would like to see is a roundtable where there are energy providers, social institutions, and energy experts that sit down together and get to know one another, because it's easier to find solutions for these problems and maybe take administrative shortcuts. So that's what we really need, this cooperation by sitting down together and exchanging ideas. What's really important here is also that we learn from one another. So the social expert should learn more about the problems in the energy sector. The energy coach and advisor should learn more about the social policies behind fuel poverty. So it's all about exchanging knowledge in order to help our clients directly. Now let's go back to the statement that the government has shifted the responsibility to the energy provider. Of course, this is all regulated on a national level, but it's not. Well, you should ask yourself, isn't it a bit too easy from the government's point of view to just shift the responsibility, pass it on to the energy provider? If we think about the fact that the thermal quality of a building really determines the energy consumption, and only electricity consumption has to do with the actual usage, I think that's why we should exclude one more person, one more group of experts into this roundtable. And that's an expert coming from the entire field of building law, housing development, housing funding in the field of housing. So I think one expert or a group of experts from this field should definitely be included in this roundtable. By doing so, we can get more funding going into these areas of housing renovation and building development. I'm really happy that we have the project NPOR that is working in this specific field and that would like to dig deeper into this issue. So what we need here is energy consultation together with housing law experts and funding law experts. Now, in conclusion, I would like to give you some perspective and an outlook on what we are working towards. It's not going to get any easier, that's for sure. It's going to be harder for the affected people, the fuel poor, because energy is going to be more expensive. Right now, for 2022, Austria wants to introduce a carbon tax as a kind of steering tool to exit fossil fuel more quickly. But of course, a carbon tax will have an impact on all of the other energy sources. So basically, energy and fuel will be more expensive, will get more expensive intentionally, and it will be even harder for vulnerable households to pay for their fuel usage. The prices will rise for everybody. The second point I want to bring up is smart meters. Right now in Austria, we're working towards deploying smart meters. In the next couple of years, each household will have a smart meter, and the tariffs will be adapted accordingly. Unfortunately, the fixed costs will probably rise, and the operational costs or the usage costs will be lowered. So it will be attractive for energy suppliers. And when it comes to prepayment meters, the clients or the customers pay their energy supply beforehand, and afterwards, in some countries like in Belgium, they can add to this payment, or sometimes they actually don't have access to their energy supply anymore. So I think there are risks connected to this. So what I want to emphasize is that the smart meter is a good idea, but it does have certain risks. So we should have some measures going along with it. For example, we should look at what consumer tariffs are being offered to the households. And we are only looking at electricity here, but can we use prepayment meters for district heat or for gas, for example? Because we always have to look at how these measures are actually implemented on the market. And now, in conclusion, I would tell you two of my wishes that I have for the future. I would wish the project DoppelPlus that it goes from an initiative to a continuous program. I hope that they can continue their work and that all the experience gathered will be used by all of the interested parties. One of my favorite parts that I've seen is that there is an energy guidance sheet or an energy guideline that has been even translated into Farsi. And last but not least, we've all seen that the topic of fuel poverty is sometimes used as an argument against the energy transition. Because, sure, we want an energy transition, but we cannot forget about fuel poverty. So we should first solve the problem of poverty and fuel poverty before we can even talk about energy transition. We should really be careful here to not slow down energy transition because of this argument about fuel poverty. Nobody should have to do without renewable energy because of cost issues. For a better world tomorrow. Thank you very much, Mr. Benke, for this outlook and for your perspective on the European and Austrian projects that are going on. Now I would like to welcome André Sticker, who is the project leader of DoppelPlus and also of Energie Tirol. André, your professional background lies in social work, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say about the project itself.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm sending greetings from our Parliament building to everybody out there. Let me introduce the DoppelPlus project to you. It is an initiative that we started in 2016, and it is coming to an end right now. It is a campaign that has stretched over 4.5 years across the Tyrol, dealing with awareness raising, energy saving, and climate protection. The initiative has been funded by the European Commission, by, well, the LIFE program it is called, then 2 departments of the state of Tyrol, the departments of Environment Protection and Energy Law, and also by the utilities company of the city of Virgo. Over these 4.5 years, there have been many multipliers, supporters, other organizations, energy suppliers that also have supported our project and are now a huge network. Ingrid Philippe and Josef Geisler already mentioned that we have this vision of Tyrol 2050, and the initiative is embedded in this. From the beginning, we knew that the DoppelPlus initiative is a major component in realizing this initiative of Tyrol 2050. This project should only be the start, however, because the state of Tyrol is currently working on a new strategy for climate and sustainability. We have certain kind of lighthouse projects, I call them, because we think that the DoppelPlus initiative is a great project and an example not only for the Tyrol but also for all of Austria. Let's have a look at the project. As Mr. Benke said, in the Tyrol, 10,000 households are affected by fuel poverty. So we have a huge energy-saving potential. Then we have to say that we have a very diverse target group. We have the long-term unemployed, we have recipients of social benefits, we have migrants, we have asylum seekers, and also women with low or no pensions at all. So we have different kinds of people who we want to reach with this program, which is not always easy. We will speak about that as well later. What they have in common is private problems, fears maybe. They have concerns regarding how they will deal with the money they have. So those people are very concerned regarding their resources, and maybe they do not think as much about protecting the climate and saving energy. Our project partners, such as Klimabündnis Tirol, often asked us why we are planning a project for this target group, because those are the people with the least carbon emissions among all other groups, because they do not have the necessary funds. Well, I have to say, on the one hand, it is about saving energy and protecting climate, but there is a huge social aspect as well. We want to include everybody. And it is also about leaving nobody behind. So everybody should be able to participate in the discussion about sustainability and good living conditions for everybody. There are two central or key questions in this project. On the one hand, how can we sustainably improve the situation of the people affected? So there's the social component. But on the other hand, there's the question of how can we reach these people? How can we include them and motivate them to participate in our climate protection initiatives? So the motto, "Seize opportunities, protect climate," is the motto of this initiative. At DoppelPlus, we trying to reach, or we have two focus areas. We have the advantages for the individual person or household, but then also we have the social, political level for the community with all the advantages for everybody. So we have a win-win situation here at DoppelPlus for all the parties involved. So we can say that DoppelPlus combines climate protection, sustainability, and the fight of poverty, because climate protection and social justice are closely interlocked and cannot be separated from each other. I would like to speak about our project partners now. As Mr. Benke already mentioned, we tried to include various types of partners and experts through these organizations in order to provide energy consultations to, well, include energy suppliers and many other partners. Klimabündnis Tirol focuses on educating people about climate protection. Then we have Community Virgel focusing which has already made experience realizing a project. Then we have experts in integration, community interculturality. Caritas, for example, was part of this project as well. They have experience in fighting poverty, in reducing social injustices, but also the volunteering, which is really important. ALPS has contributed in risk management, monitoring, and other aspects. So as a team over the past 4.5 years, we tried to find volunteers who were willing to be trained to become energy and climate coaches. This is what really lies at the heart of the project. Those are the people who go into the households and really coach people. In total, we have educated 90 volunteers. As you can see here, there's a picture of one training session, people who have become our coaches. This way, we have had multiplying effects. We were able to reach a lot of people and additional expertise. The volunteers did help us to find easy access to all households. The volunteers added values to our project, such as knowledge of foreign languages. Maybe they had a migration background. Maybe they had other kinds of expertise that they could bring into this project. There's also a local perspective because the people know their way around their city, their village. They do know how networks work. They know where to shop. They know about mobility options. And of course, they know the people. They can reach households, speak the language, and also can speak with them on an equal level. The DoppelPlus initiative has a very attractive program for these volunteers. On the one hand, there are regular roundtables, social events, Christmas parties. So it's a very meaningful and attractive volunteering job, combining a social component and climate protection. So what does household consultation look like? The volunteers are being coached in all kinds of aspects. However, speaking with one household, not all the aspects are always involved. The consultations include topics that are important for this specific household, for example. Then we check their service bills, maybe their energy bills, and also speak about individual questions that the persons affected might have. So our volunteers are experts in many things. They have certain tools, and they visit the households with those things. In addition to going into the households, we have other offers. Of course, due to the COVID situation, things have changed. We have workshops that we also put on YouTube. We have offered telecoachings. We have produced brochures, cookbooks, seasonal food calendars, but also multilingual workshops. And this shows you that we have a broad network that we try to maintain in order to reach many households. So let's have a look at our results. We have reached more than 15,000 people and have conducted more than 800 household consultations, which has resulted in savings of more than 2,000 kilowatt hours per year. On average, this saves one household 209 euros per year and saves more than 2 million kilowatt hours of energy. This equals 630 tons of CO2 equivalent. ALPS accompanied this project. Those numbers are not estimated. They are the results of this project. Max Riede will later speak about this as well. So These are great numbers, and they are very promising to us. So, as Mr. Benke also said, it is easy to speak about fuel poverty, but it's difficult to become active. However, if you become active, you can move a lot. We can see this here. We also, beyond the quantity, have made quality improvements. We have created sustainable job placement. People have been integrated in work positions better. Together with the city of Innsbruck, we have been able to offer flats, for example, to tenants. As a result of our initiative, the quality of life has improved for many participants. Also, we noticed that many organizations in Austria, but also in other countries, have shown great interest in our project. Of course, it is a great pleasure for us to provide our knowledge to other organizations. It has also never been a problem to find volunteers. People have been interested. People of the Tyrol have been great in helping us. So the lessons learned that I can speak about to you today, you can see here. It was difficult to reach all the target groups or the target group. It has been difficult to reach them directly. So it is important to cooperate because people do not come to you to get some energy consultations. Through social services, communities, maybe other organizations and associations helped us reach the target group. Due to this win-win situation mentioned earlier, the target group is motivated to protect the climate. And this also reduces prejudice in this target group. Climate protection is no longer an abstract matter. Everybody has an idea what it is. It is not an elitist topic anymore. It becomes more approachable, and also it serves myself because I have more money in my pocket at the end of the month. And it does not necessarily mean that I have to change something in a way that I don't get something back for it. Of course, it is a very time-consuming job, but also very enriching for the project, for example, because we have access to the target group and the multiplying effect. However, you cannot reach everybody just using volunteers. Sometimes you need specialists and experts to send to the households because the volunteers are simply overwhelmed with the situation. So we need professional help in these cases. Let's speak about climate protection and fighting of poverty. We have been able to provide many synergies. This also supports inclusion and integration and opens up new fields of action and the opportunity to have a social discourse. Also, dependencies are being reduced. People need less support by other services, for example. So let's have an outlook on the future. The DoppelPlus 2.0 project is already being introduced. We will continue our project with this in 2021, starting in May. We want to focus on energy and climate coachings, making use of our volunteers, but also experts. We have great cooperation with the social department of the state of the Tyrol regarding the subsidy for heating costs. Then we want to have the project split up into regional and content-wise aspects, and also have more exchange of knowledge and experience. So seizing opportunities and protecting the climate is our motto, which we also want to focus on in our new program. So finally, I would like to thank everybody involved, especially our volunteers who went into the households and consulted them in such a great way with their whole heart. Then I would like to thank the State of Tyrol, the utilities of Wörgl, Ms. Claudia Guerini, Ingrid Philippe, Josef Geisler, and also Reinhard Jenewein from the utilities company in Wörgl. Also, I would like to thank everybody, all the organizations supporting us in the past. There are so many, I cannot mention them because I don't have the time. Thank you very much, Claudia Pfirmann, by the NEMO agency, who has always supported us and advised us, especially when it's about accounting of the EU project. Other partners, Albers, Caritas, Energie Tirol, and also the people working at Klimabündnis Tirol. So I would like to thank everybody, and I hope that we will have great closing event. I'm looking forward to hearing the other speakers, and I'm looking forward to our future activities with regard to climate protection. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andre, for giving us this insight into the project and the DoppelPlus initiative here in Tyrol. Now I have the pleasure to talk directly to one of our volunteers. I would like to welcome Roland Gruber to the stage. Thank you for being here with us, Roland. Thanks for taking the time. We're going to talk about the time, the aspect of time regarding voluntary work in a minute. But first of all, I would like to ask you something that is really interesting for a lot of people, I think. Have there been any moments where you came into a household and you really felt that you could change something, that you could maybe advise them so they can have a very significant impact in their everyday life? Well, first of all, thank you very much, Dara, for the invitation. It's an honor to be here as a representative of all the voluntary climate and energy coaches. Well, we've all got a lot of stories to tell, a lot of interesting situations, but what was really interesting to me was that ventilation was such a big issue, so our ventilation habits, and I would like to share a short story with you. I know we don't have a lot of time, but a really quick story should be possible at this point. Well, I visited an older gentleman who was used to, or is used to, getting up early and tilting the windows right away because he has a smoking habit. And he didn't do this only in the morning, but it was a ritual. So he kept the windows tilted for a long time, for hours even. And at the same time, he switched on his radiator. So, of course, this ended up in high energy costs. He knew that this was not a great solution, but only after we calculated for him what this actually meant cost-wise and how much money he could save by changing his habit, he was actually willing to do something about it. Well, basically, we played this situation through with him because we cannot give him advice that he cannot put into practice, of course. So we simply talked about his smoking habit. He takes breaks, of course, between the day where he can open the windows, he can do periodic ventilation. You can do this every couple of hours after smoking. And he was so happy to get this really simple advice. We were really surprised that with this input, we were able to improve this situation for this gentleman. Thank you very much for this insight into your work. This is a really specific measure that we take to change our habits, right? So we have to change as people. We have to change our everyday habits. Do you think the same effect could be possible if you did the same work only through brochures and other channels, by communicating not directly with the clients? Well, I think that going from knowledge to action is not that easy in our practical work. That's why it's so important to do coachings on site, because together with the affected households, we take a look at their life and then try to figure out how we can change their habits. And I think just with a brochure or just talking to them, not on site but in an office, for example, this would not have the same success. Now I want to go back to the topic of time management. You are quality manager in the field of electromobility, so you have an affinity for this topic, but still, what motivated you to take on this volunteer work, to put all your time and effort into the project? Well, when I joined the project, or when I was contacted over 4 years ago, they asked me to participate in the project, and it was clear for me that I wanted to be part of this. I had undergone an energy coach training a couple of years ago, but I only used that knowledge in the private field, and now I actually had the official mandate to work with this knowledge. Of course, time is always an issue, but I have a good job. I feel comfortable with the time I spent there, and I have time to spend on other things. And I'm really happy. It makes me happy to do the work, the volunteer work I've been doing for this project. It's never been a question of time for me. Has your look at fuel poverty and your idea of fuel poverty changed now that you've done this voluntary work? Yes. Well, on the one hand, poverty has something that I've already witnessed. I used to live in Brazil for 2 years, 20 years ago, and so I had an insight into poverty. What made me really worried, or what was really interesting to me, was to see how easily someone can get affected by fuel poverty, especially. For example, I advised a college student, a very young college student, because I didn't know what this young woman needed in her household from outside, but then we were able to help her. It's really nice to hear that you were able to help out so many people and households, and also diverse groups of people. So kudos to you for doing this work. What would you like to see when this project is continued? Do you have any wishes for the future? Now you can use this platform to let us know. Well, I would wish all of us to continue with the same motivation as we did in the past, because we are all willing to keep on working despite of COVID, and we would actually continue our work right away. So despite the pandemic, I'm really grateful that the federal state of Tyrol is also supporting us in our work. That's great to hear. Thank you very much for this insight into the practical aspects of this project, of this initiative. It's one of the most central roles, the volunteer work that you've been doing. Unfortunately, we are short for time, so I want to come to a conclusion, but remind you at the same time that you can ask questions. And Mr. Gruber will also be there at the panel, at the final panel, where we will ask these questions to him and to our other experts. Now I would like to welcome Maximilian Riede. He's the former project leader of ALP-S, and he is the coordinator for DoppelPlus at the ALP-S agency, so he will tell us more about monitoring and the numbers and figures behind the project. Welcome, Max.
Hello, everybody. I hope that everybody can hear me and see my presentation as well. Good afternoon, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about the numbers, also the effects of our project. The next 15 minutes, we will not only see numbers, but also some quotations. Yeah, so let's start. I do hope that you can see my presentation. Here I put on some logos of project partners. We have spoken about many of them, but it's worth mentioning again. We do not need data collection tools for this. Cooperation of various project partners, actors, supporters, both regarding funding and expertise, are really important to this project. I really want to stress that. So the cooperation has been great. You see energy suppliers, building companies, counseling companies, and others are really necessary in this process, in this initiative. So I wanted to emphasize this again before getting started with the numbers. When it comes to numbers, I would like to show you some specific results of the monitoring and also regarding evaluation. The project has been running for 4 years in a very complex way. So you have various possibilities how to monitor and evaluate the project. We used the state of research and also of practice in Europe. We had a look at similar activities in Europe and how they monitored the projects. But also we asked ourselves, what is enough or what is too much for households to answer in surveys, for example? So involving these people is important too. An important tool for us was the so-called indicator list. Early on a cloud, we shared a list that was accessible to all the project partners across the whole process to keep them up to date. And also to show our monitoring results and also share them. This way we wanted to make sure that no effect and activity gets lost in this process. Of course, we had a look at the key measures, the starter packages, the household consultations, but also project activities beyond that. In 4 years, of course, this project is a topic on Facebook, it has a website, it has been a topic in events, has been topic of conferences. So beyond the core activity of consultations, there have been many things going on. To keep an overview, we have set a set of indicators measuring all our measures and also helping us steering our measures. Here you can see a table showing you an overview of how complex the data collection process is. The first 2 columns show you the key aspects, elements of the project. Sorry, not the columns, the rows. So you see the climate protection starter package here, and also our energy saving checkup. Rows 3 and 4 show other additional projects of this program that have been monitored. The focus, however, was on the household consultations and the effects of the starter packages. This indicator list shows the actual and the target values, and based on this we calculated our achievement. We focus on these 4 results. We wanted to find 60 volunteers in this 4-year period, volunteers to go into the households to consult them, like Mr. Gruber. In fact, we found 91 people who have brought a lot of effort into this project, which is a really great result. We have an equally impressive result regarding special consultations. We had 30 planned and actually 86 have taken place. Those are consultations with specific topics which require a specific focus. And now, speaking about the last row, here you can see that we aimed to train 210 people in the trained-trainer advanced education programs, and actually we trained 516. So here you can see we have been very successful, and this is especially important because this is something that helps us for the future, because these people are multipliers. So this is only a start for us. The seed that has been planted will blossom later on. Here you can see the number of energy and climate protection checks. We had aimed to conduct 1,080. We have only done 806. This is not 100%, unfortunately. The same applies to the starter packages. But the truth is, the last year has been difficult because in March 2020, the project activities have come to a halt almost and have been influenced, of course. We switched to online consultations, but this took some time to switch. Of course, it is a shame because before getting started with this program, before everybody knows about it, it takes some time. So preparation time, you need to find volunteers, you need to train the volunteers, you need to get them ready to get out there. And then you're getting started, and then there's this pandemic coming in, and this was a problem for us, of course. But despite all of this, we conducted 75% of the consultations that had been planned. We reached more than 10,000 people with our website, so that is great. What we tend to forget recently is that 2016 there has also been an issue, which was the refugee crisis. When you're working in a social aspect, in a social field, of course, this is something you remember. People who used to live in refugee homes, for example, are also part of the target group. So this had been an issue in the first 2 years of the project. So we can ask, how much energy were we actually able to save with this project? In Austria, we have a so-called default formula that helps measuring energy consultations to see the level of energy savings that has been achieved. We use this formula here, and the result is that using these 806 consultations, with an effect over 2 years, we were able to save 1.5 million kilowatt hours and almost 400 tons of CO2. So we believe that the effects are visible for 2 years. So one consultation has the effect for 2 years only. Of course, these are not fixed numbers. We are trying to get a picture of reality here. Measuring the actual savings is a bit more complex. This is just an estimation, because the real measurement of our results would be just too much for our project. What I also wanted to mention is the computer-assisted telephone interviews that we conducted together with a professional survey institute. This is important because we do not only want to have a look at the hard facts and the numbers, but we also want to learn what did help people, what worked well for them, how did they understand the consultations, were they able to implement the steps recommended to them. So this is really important for the future. We have to know, how does the offered program work? We conducted 119 very comprehensive interviews with the target group that had undergone consultation before, so we have gained some insight here. 42% of people said that the motivation participating in the DoppelPlus initiative was actually an acute problem. They had mold, they had energy debts, they had high heating costs and high energy costs. So they contacted us because of these problems. About 35% of people said they acted preventively because they wanted to prevent themselves from this problem, to do something to protect the climate, for example. And 23% of people mentioned other reasons. Maybe they saw the advantages of the starter package, but also regarding mobility and maybe other kinds of motivational factors. When we asked them how satisfied they were with the coaching, we can see that most of them, 69%, were very satisfied, really satisfied. 28% were satisfied. So you can see the absolute majority of people surveyed here clearly were satisfied or very satisfied with the offer by our volunteers. Of course, we also have to not only ask about quality and motivation, but also what has actually been achieved. We have various results here, all indicating one clear tendency. So about 70% of the people surveyed said that their energy costs, fuel costs, have been reduced using the starter package. Almost the same number of people said that tips regarding behavior help them reduce their energy consumption. Also, about 70% told us that they became more motivated dealing with the issue of climate protection and energy savings. The multiplying effect was also part of the CATI interviews. So we asked the people to how many people, what issues they were talking about in these coachings. So the fuel or electricity saving tips were the #1 topic. The issues of ventilation and heating were the second and third most discussed topics. It is really interesting that people despite us thinking some information might be basic, we're really gaining new knowledge and we're interested in this topic. And maybe we also discussed topics that the people had not thought about before. I already mentioned the kilowatt hours saved before. So here you can see what we were able to save for the consultation per year, per household in euros. We did a cost estimation for the costs in euros. In total, the household saved 209 euros per year. With an effective period of 2 years, this means about 418 euros that can be saved per household. This is a huge number. Of course, this is just a minor contributor to the result for the whole of the Tyrol, but if we continue this project using the multiplying effect, for example, and continuing this project, we will really see results later on. Here I have a quote that sums up the results very well. We asked people regarding the socio-economic effect of this project. Mr. Steger before already mentioned that there has been a huge contribution to fight fuel poverty. We have people, or a group of people that is difficult to access, that we can really help, and there has not been any previous offer similar to this one. Experts have said that it is absolutely necessary that these initiatives are being continued. Our target group really needs what we are doing. So it is a really important issue. To conclude, I already said that there has not been anything like our initiative before, so we just started at the right time, in the right place. Despite COVID, we were able to consult people. More kilowatt hours could be saved than we had planned in the minimum objectives. The context of the project was a complex one. The transition to online consultations was very challenging for everybody. However, the results show that we were able to reach the target group and that we were actually able to make savings. So this shows that this method of going into households, not only communicating through indirect ways, but really talking to the people in person, is extremely effective in order to reach everybody, to deal with the challenges of our times, climate protection, fighting poverty. This brings me to the end of my short presentation on monitoring. Thank you very much for your attention. Later on, we will have the opportunity to answer some questions. Thank you.
Dank, Max.
Thank you very much, Max. So at this point, I would like to ask my first question to Ingrid Felipe. As we've already mentioned, she's the State Councillor for Climate Protection and Deputy Governor. Ingrid, what is important to you when it comes to continuing this project, and where do you think what is the key position here? Because sometimes it's not really easy to understand who's responsible. Well, I think this is one of the most interesting questions. Where can we continue our work? Where can we get started? First of all, I would like all of you for your interesting presentations. I think it's important that we realize that we really want to continue the work that we've done for now, because all of our efforts have shown results. I'm almost a little touched, got a little emotional, because we have these measures have been so highly appreciated, apparently, as we've seen in the surveys that have just been presented. So the impacts have been numerous and very diverse. I think it's really important to keep up the motivation, especially taking motivation and impulses from this afternoon to continue our work. And we will also make sure to emphasize this success within the government and with our partners, because it has been so important for all of these partners to come together to bring various perspectives together. I think it would be great. I went back to the DoppelPlus homepage, by the way, and looked at that again, because a lot of things have been translated even into Farsi, for example, like waste management guidelines, and you can see the offer that has been made and how many aspects have been touched in this project. So I've been talking to Andreas Sticker to make sure what we want to do in the future as a lighthouse project. We want to continue our climate action. It's really important for me to keep on this work based on what we've done so far. For me, it's also it's stuck with me what one of my colleagues said: turning a project into a program. We want to work in this field long term and also especially address the recipients of heating subsidies, because there we find households that are highly affected by fuel poverty. I don't want to see any obligations, any obligatory measures here, but I would rather see a service offered to the people affected. If someone is financially in a situation where they need heating subsidies, they need other assistance as well. And you know that the state of Tyrol offers heating subsidy no matter what kind of heating system is deployed in the particular household. So I think what we can do here is offer assistance not only in the financial aspect, but beyond that. This will definitely be our goal. There have been similar models in other cities where experts have looked at what we can do to make sure that people don't suffer from financial burdens and also at the same time exit from fossil fuels. So for this year we will continue our work as it is, but for the next year I'm sure that we will have a more comprehensive approach. This sounds really great and promising. There have been so many aspects to this project, like workshops regarding conscious consumption and housing. So awareness was raised for various stakeholders, not only for the target group, but for a lot of interested parties, energy providers, community housing providers, and stakeholders from social institutions. What do you think? Should we continue in this regard, or how can we make this content accessible and usable for other target groups? Yes, I think it's definitely important that we use this project DoppelPlus and maintain it under this brand, if you want, because a lot of things went really well with all the 5 organizations that were involved. Andreas Stiger has mentioned the 5 organizations, and this network has been really effective and useful. So we would like to continue using these contacts to provide access. Because as you've heard, it's difficult to find access to the target group, to reach the target group that is actually affected by these issues. So we need more network partners to help us with that and to make it more wider known that we have these services, this assistance. We need people with a lot of linguistic capabilities so that we can inform different kinds of people. this will be one of our goals, to find out who can we work with associations at the local and communal level, because there's a lot of potential, in my opinion, for the people affected, but also for the advisors, for the ones receiving advice as well, of course, and for society as a whole, because we all actually see long-term impacts, positive impacts for all of us. I think we can continue on the basis that we've created now. I think so too. It will continue to be interesting for all of us. If we now look at the target for Tyrol, so making Tyrol energy autonomous till 2050, and look at the idea of taking financial burden off the people and protecting the climate or the environment at the same time. What can we do here to make sure that all target groups come with us in this journey, along this journey? Well, for DoppelPlus, in our project, we want to raise awareness, first of all. We want to motivate people and encourage them to shift behaviors and also thinking patterns. But from the political standpoint, we should not only introduce pull measures, so invite people to do something and encourage them, but also push measures. So if you want, we need to create the prerequisites to make a renewable energy, a life based on renewable energy and on ecologically conscious decisions more affordable. So what we want here is a tax reform that takes a look at social and environmental issues. So people who are environmentally more conscious actually profit from that at a financial level. So all of this will be necessary in the future. So also behavior that harms the environment and is wasteful should be, well, punished in the long term. For example, heating with heating oil will not be something that we want to continue in the future. There are no new oil heating systems deployed now. So that's a political standpoint, and we want to make sure that people, no matter their financial situation, are encouraged to are environmentally conscious. We don't want to punish people, if you want, for being environmentally conscious because it is more expensive. So we want to continue in this regard. Thank you very much, Ingrid Philippe. Thank you very much for your contribution. I'll be happy to involve you in the discussion, but now I would like to continue with the panel discussion. And as I've said, we are very happy to include questions from the audience in this panel discussion. And I would like to welcome back André Sticker and Roland Gruber. And in our remote session, we have Mr. Benke and Mr. Riede joining us again. Right now, I would like to start with a question for Mr. Benke. You have talked a lot about the project and the impact that the project had. With all the results in mind, where do you think political steering tools could be, for example, when it comes to rent, including utilities, and what could we do here in the future?
Hören, aber das sollte sich.
Unfortunately, we cannot hear you right now. Well, now it's working. Well, you already answered the question in your question. Well, heat supply is a big issue for households that are at risk of poverty, because especially people at risk of poverty live in buildings that are not ideal when it comes to energy efficiency. So the heating system itself is old, and the building too. So here the state administration should make sure that rents should include utilities, they should include heat supply to make sure that it can be more affordable. So what we should do here is make it more attractive for landlords to offer these rental models, including heating expenses. So I think here we have an approach that would make it more accessible and more affordable for people at risk of poverty when we involve the landlords. So we could actually make sure that they get subsidies for providing housing that is more energy efficient. So we could actually get this support shifted from the poor people to the landlords that provide better housing. Thank you very much for this idea. André Sticker, what focal points have you set for yourself for the next year? Do you already think about these aspects, or is it just about continuing the good path you're on? Well, what we would like to do is continue the training program for volunteers. We want to find new volunteers that we train to continue the program after that. Another focal point will be including heat subsidies in our consideration, as Ingrid Philippe already mentioned. There's one goal that we cannot put into practice right now, but what we see is that a lot of households use devices that are simply not energy efficient, not energy saving, and there are no financial means to actually replace them. So if we created a budget at the national level to really provide these households with the necessary funding to replace, for example, kitchen utensils or kitchen appliances, that would be great to really tackle this at the infrastructure level. Then we would like to be able to contact more social institutions, the target groups themselves. And what has been very effective is training employees in the social institutions to then continue our work so they can actually advise and coach their own clients. Thank you very much. Roland, may I ask you another question? When you listened to this answer by André, what do you think? Is this question of replacing old devices a pressing one? And then I wanted to go back to the question of volunteer work in general. So volunteer work and professional experts working on site. What do you think is the advantage of having volunteers working on site, and when do we need experts to come and join them? Well, yes, when it comes to replacing devices, I can agree, yes, I can agree with you. The appliances are very often too old, and we should take action here in the future. When it comes to volunteer work in general and the difference, what makes them different from professionals, I think we actually did a great job so far. We realized when we had to dig deeper and we had to bring in professional know-how from outside. So I think we can actually keep on doing what we've been doing. So we make a first coaching with volunteer workers, and then you bring in professional experts to dig deeper into the subjects. Okay, first of all, I would like to ask whether there are audience questions. Nicole Ottler, please let us know about the questions from the audience. Yes, we've received several questions from the audience. One goes to Maximilian Riede. What were the main challenges when it came to monitoring, and what could you do differently in the future? Or would you do differently in the future? Well, The biggest challenges were definitely, or it was the question how we can combine all these aspects and interesting aspects of this project, how to bring all of this together, how we can collect data more efficiently for the households as well. So our construct has been quite elaborate. So we were the ones coordinating the monitoring, but then we had an external party doing the phone calls to gather the data. This, of course, was quite demanding as a process, but it also made sure that we had comprehensive results in the end. So from my point of view, this was a big challenge to actually reach the people that we needed for the monitoring, but also reach them in a way that made sure that we got all the information that we needed in a short period of time. Because you cannot take it for granted that someone takes part in a 15 to 20-minute phone interview, because you know how it is when someone calls you and asks you to take part in a phone interview. So that's a big question that we are going to have to address in the future. Maybe we can introduce some digital ways of collecting data, more simple ways to collect the data, also get results more quickly. So that's something that I would recommend digging into. However, we need to keep in mind that we cannot know for sure whether the people we want to reach are actually taking part. There will always be a distance between the ones being questions and the ones asking the questions. So what I would like to see is more digitalization. That's an approach that is definitely possible, but of course this is also not perfect, because we don't know if all the devices are accessible for all households and whether there's internet access in all households. So we have not found the perfect solution yet, and I think this is the main challenge.
Dankeschön.
Thank you very much. Speaking of data, well, we will get back to that maybe later. But first of all, I would like to ask Mr. Benke a question regarding energy providers and customers. We have heard that the energy suppliers are also responsible to deal with fuel poverty in the consultation process. However, of course, this is a kind of a tense area, maybe in the relationship between the supplier and the customer. Maybe you even have an idea on how to solve this. Well, at the moment, the energy supplier notices a household once they are in default and are not able to pay their bills. This, of course, is a conflict situation. So you have two parties speaking maybe a different language in a way that the supplier needs to have the bills paid to ensure that everybody receives energy and electricity. And then on the other side, you have the household in need to pay the bills. An idea may be to have a similar thing like another energy supplier maybe that could be introduced for every customer in difficulty to be transferred to the other provider to make sure that this person still receives the energy needed, maybe with a fixed price, fixed tariffs. Maybe these suppliers could provide more counseling for the customers. because this way it would be able to provide the households in need with more specific consultations. We have a so-called second bank that does similar things, so it is imaginable. We have a different price structure here, so why shouldn't it also work in the energy sector? So maybe some people say that this is not something that's possible at all. I would say in such a situation, well, this should only be temporary. We do not want to have people in the system forever, but in a situation of conflict, maybe there is the opportunity to have a special kind of counseling, maybe special contracts to get them out of the situation. So maybe this would be a possibility for these target groups to have a second energy supplier, or whatever you want to call it, to ensure the energy supply for these people, so these people can actively participate in our society, receives information, because this is necessary. And maybe a second energy supplier would be an idea. This is just a suggestion. Yeah, that's a very interesting idea. The DoppelPlus project, of course, has started going on another path. Yes, this is just from the perspective of the energy supplier. Maybe a more specific, more target group-oriented approach. Maybe supporting a household, maybe helping them modernize things, for example. Cooperation with energy suppliers, cooperation between the energy supplier, the social services, and of course the owners of flats and so on is very important in this. So there is another question from the audience. Two questions to Roland Gruber. First of all, what does the perfect volunteer need to have as a characteristic maybe for this project? And then the second question, do the volunteers actually know about funding regarding modernizing, for example? Is this part of your consultations? Okay, let's speak about the first question. What are the perfect traits of a volunteer? I think you need to love people, first of all. Of course, you need to know your bits and pieces, you know. You need to have common knowledge. Of course, it helps if you're dealing with this topic in your free time. You have to be willing to volunteer in your free time. To get to your second question, yes, we have been told that we should inform people about certain initiatives and projects that are available for them and ways of funding. However, I think that, of course, these initiatives change, and I think that we could actually use an update on those. But thank you for asking this question. Yes, I would like to add something regarding updates here and what is actually needed to efficiently conduct a consultation. Andre, may I ask you, which tools are needed for implementing this project, in your opinion? I would like to speak about the kind of funding consultation, because this is not something that we can offer and should offer. Of course, there are certain funding opportunities that our clients can use, but if actually they need a lot of consultation in this regard, we need to refer them to other authorities and other organizations. So we have to make sure that the volunteer work actually focuses on what it's supposed to focus on. So we also need to protect our volunteers in this sense. However, the volunteers do know where they can get the information they need and can also make it visible to the parties. Together with the city of Innsbruck, we had a good experience with helping people moving into flats. Moving into a new flat is a situation of change. People are open to change in such a situation, and these changes might be sustainable and might accompany them in their future life. So it is important for us to train people regarding upcycling, mobility, maybe what furniture they can buy, maybe they can upcycle their furniture. We had some pilot projects together with the city of Innsbruck, and our feedback was very good. Of course, there's always some things that we can do better, but it was a good start. I think the roundtable mentioned by Mr. Benke, this kind of networking is something that we really need, because not all energy suppliers of the state of Tyrol are involved in the project yet, which would be a very efficient approach, of course, if all would be part of it. Also, to gradually expand the project. Question to Maximilian Riede. So we have a lot of data that you collected. Do you think that we are able, or you are able, to use this data maybe also for other projects that want to follow our lead? I think that is a good question that you always ask yourself after an important and long project. Of course, we ask ourselves that as well. There is a final monitoring report containing all of our results. The project committee has seen this result, or these results as well. As far as I know, it is not planned to publish these results or to provide them to target groups. However, maybe if somebody present here thinking about this, maybe you can contact me or Andres Digger directly to speak about this, because I think there is plenty of information that we can actually provide. We can have an exchange. But to my knowledge, there is currently no plan regarding publishing the results or using the data in another way. Of course, there is final documentation containing all of the results, but there is no special focus on the monitoring activities. Maybe I can give the floor to Mr. Benke again. What is your opinion on the DoppelPlus project results, also in comparison to other projects? What are the best practices that you can derive for the Tyrol? I will definitely get the results from the Tyrol and have a closer look at them, because I want to know where we can go. I think finding the right path is not possible, because there is not one single perfect right path. Because it also always depends on the target group. There's one question that always keeps popping up in the Tyrol, is how do we really reach people? How do we access more people? For this, we need to define a target group, first of all. Who is part of the target group? I tried defining it before because every target group needs a different kind of training, coaching, information. Social what and our program is more for the energy suppliers, not for the social institutions. So in the end, I think we take the various aspects from different programs and sum them up. But it is always difficult to compare. So we will keep our eyes open. We will keep in touch with the project partners on an international level and use the network. I would also like to encourage you, if you have any ideas, if you have any questions relating to this event here, maybe share them with us so we will be able to include these issues in the further planning of our project. I would like to ask Roland Gruber, when you look back on your coachings, are there moments that you always have to think of because they were touching for you, or you just remember them very well? I think all of my consultations were kind of emotional because you very quickly get to a very personal level. Because these people are also looking for an answer, and they hope that you can give them an answer in a private environment. When I leave, I always think, this has been really emotional. The team of coaches we have is a really great one. We have a team spirit. We have great cooperation. So I'm very optimistic that despite this pause that we have at the moment, we will get back to full speed very quickly once it's possible again, because we have a great team spirit. That is great to hear. So you go into a person's household. What's the first thing you do? Do you have information up front? Of course, we have information beforehand. Mostly there is a focal point, not always. Well, some people, as you could see, only want preventive consultations, but they also have certain focal points, want to save energy costs, for example. With the information we have up front, we go to the household. We get to the point rather swiftly, which might be surprising. Mostly also we go there as a team of two. This works quite well for us to establish personal contact and then really get to the point quickly. I have to dig a bit deeper. So you have your starter package with you. What does it contain? What do you do with the households? So this is kind of our Lloyd. We just hand them the starter package at the very end, so they keep listening, you know. This package contains useful things for every household. We have a clock, a timer, an egg boiling timer, for example. We bring them even tea bags, LED bulbs, a thermostat. This is a kind of present that we give the client in the end. So even if you have a consultation that is not very successful, so to speak, you still have something nice at the end, you know. Yeah, and it's a great thing that the people are able to use these objects, and we explain to them how to use them. Mostly we put the things to use already together with them. very interesting. So this brings me to the end of this event. I would like to thank every speaker who made the presentation today. I would like to thank all the project partners. I would like to thank the state of the Tyrol for providing us their hall here for this event. The videos will be available on YouTube, both in German and English, on the Tyrol 2050 YouTube channel. Finally, I would like to say every chain is only as strong as its weakest member. So it is really a good thing to always think of fuel poverty when it comes to our Tyrol 2050 energy autonomous program and to continue this project. I wish all the volunteers and all our viewers a great success. We are just getting started with fighting fuel poverty at the moment. So this brings me to an end, and I would like to thank everybody and say goodbye.